There's also another huge story breaking in the last 24 hours from the New York Times, which says that Donald Trump's now resigned personal attorney, John Dowd, discussed the possibility that Donald Trump might pardon the indicted Trump associates, Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort. There are three people familiar with these discussions that told the New York Times that the discussions were between Trump's now resigned / fired lawyer, John Dowd, and the lawyers for Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort. And this took place some time ago. And what they were discussing was if they were to plead guilty, but not to cooperate with Mueller, would Trump be willing to pardon them? And the reason that Trump's lawyer would be doing this is that Trump's interest would be that Flynn and Manafort not give Mueller information that might be used against Donald Trump, maybe say something that gets Trump in trouble. So the idea is if Flynn and Manafort believe that Trump will pardon them, they all of a sudden have no reason to cooperate with Mueller, right? The reason to cooperate with Mueller would be if they don't believe they're going to get pardoned, and by cooperating, they might be able to get a lesser charge or a lower sentence if they are to be found guilty at some point in the future. If they know or believe that Trump is just going to pardon them, they can just say to Mueller, charge me, prosecute me, sentence me, do whatever the hell you want, because they know in the back of their minds that Donald Trump is ultimately going to pardon them. And once again, we get back to the main question, the main sort of observation we've had all along with Trump's behavior here. If you did nothing wrong, do you have your lawyer start to talk about pushing people not to cooperate on the basis of a possible pardon forthcoming? If you did nothing wrong, do you worry about what Flynn and Manafort are going to tell Mueller? Because there would be nothing to tell Mueller if you actually did nothing wrong. And this report is being denied by some Trump associates. But if you listen to the denials, listen to the language they use. They are saying things all in the present. There is no consideration being given to pardoning Flynn and Manafort. There are no discussions taking place at the White House involving Donald Trump about pardoning Flynn and Manafort. That is the present tense. That is not a denial of the fact that at the time that this allegedly took place, this is something that was being discussed. Whether Trump knew about it or not, that's sort of another question. I would presume that he did. So this is really not looking good. Yeah. Not the behavior of innocent people.
That's an unorthodox political or legal strategy, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think it could work because if Trump just decides to pardon everyone, to pardon Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort, and maybe even go further and fire Robert Mueller, it would be big news for a couple of weeks. But given the fact that Republicans have control of the House and Senate, and there are so many committed Trumpists out there in the country, I think it would blow over.
I don't know. I mean, there are even Republicans who have said if Mueller goes, then that's where we go to a new level. It's been people like Lindsey Graham and some others. Do they really have the power to do that unilaterally if the Republican Party at large doesn't really want to do that? I don't know. This might be completely naive of me, but I would hope that if that were to take place, that there actually would be repercussions. But you're generally pointing out something that we've seen, which is that the new scandals just replace the previous ones and we sort of forget and move on. What we do know is that last year Trump was asking White House lawyers about how far his ability to pardon goes. We know that in other meetings, Donald Trump specifically brought up the issue of pardoning Michael Flynn. And as usual, all of the roads lead us back to obstruction of justice, right? Is a promise or implication of a possible pardon in exchange for someone not cooperating with investigators, is that a form of obstructing justice? The answer is actually legally unclear. There are legal experts that are divided on this issue. Those who say that it would be obstruction say, listen, the president has pardon powers, but the president can't use the pardon power to protect himself, that would be a form of obstruction. The counter argument is this is an absolute power to pardon that the president has. The motives of the pardon, no matter whether we can prove them or are just speculating on them, wouldn't be prosecutable no matter what. So ultimately, it's going to be a legal battle that at this point we don't know which way it would go. And then the other angle is this a form of witness tampering, right? And I don't know the answer to that. It's tough to get a precedent on that, especially if Trump's lawyer is the one having these conversations. You'd have to prove that Trump was somehow involved in that, directed, or was knowledgeable of it. But the window of deniability here is closing. The desperation is clearly growing. And by the way, related, we also learned yesterday that Paul Manafort seems to be betting on a pardon from Trump at this point. There are legal sources that spoke to CBS News and straight up said Manafort's strategy looks like is going to be do not cooperate, fight all the charges through and up to and including trial, probably end up being found guilty on something, although we don't know yet what, and then count on a Trump pardon. And that's where we are. And as far as Michael Flynn is concerned, he's in a bit of a different situation. He seems to have some motivations related to protecting his son, which might make him comport himself differently than Paul Manafort. New definition of MAGA, I think, is making attorneys get attorneys. That's really what the motto is becoming here of the Trump administration. Michael Cohen's got an attorney. Trump's attorneys now are seeking counsel. Other attorneys in the administration need to be represented. And we're very quickly headed towards a constitutional crisis where the most relevant question that will help us resolve all of this might ultimately be, what are the limits of presidential power, period? Because when you look at, can the president be indicted? When you look at, can the president use pardons to protect himself? When you look at all of these questions, what they all eventually point to at their full conclusion, if this escalates, is a decision that would ultimately have to be adjudicated as to what the limits are of presidential power. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show, and we've got a good one today. I'm glad you're with us. Today's episode of the David Pakman Show is made possible in part by War and Peace Civil War. If you've ever wanted to go back in time and help the United States defeat the Confederacy, War and Peace Civil War is a mobile online multiplayer strategy game that lets you do exactly that. You go back in time to the Civil War. You, as a Union Army commander, lead your troops against the Confederate States of America. And it not only tests your ability to strategize, but it also tests your historic knowledge. You can play online with thousands of other players, chat in real time with other players, and form military alliances, get advice and strategies from real-world historical figures like Abe Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant, develop your bases, research new technology, train huge legions of troops, even use brute force to destroy the enemy. War and Peace Civil War has a 5-star rating in both the Google Play Store and the iOS App Store. Thousands of reviews. Check it out. Download it for free right now on Android and iOS. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, use the link in the description underneath this video.